Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, scholars and dignitaries, welcome to another episode. Welcome to my world. So, David, we love you. My wife and I watch you every night in our house. I have to say that you are one of the closest we've seen to the heyday of the famous journalists, Walter Cronkite, Huntley and Brinkley, Edward Murrow, Peter Jennings, and so on. Seriously, there have been a handful of journalists that have stood out and stood the test of time in their investigative and journalistic competence, and we place you among that elite and exclusive group. However, that said, I am very upset with you. The other night on your news program, you lied. Yes, you lied. I know you might say that you exaggerated. Your producer would say that you used editorial license or embellished or inflated. I understand. In business, you always put your best case forward, and in law, you use legal posturing. But no, you lied. Period. And you use that one despicable trick that is taboo in the journalism field. You mixed editorial comment with journalistic reporting, and that is a no-no. It's a violation of the purity and sanctity of journalism. David, I don't watch any other so-called news shows. And of course, the newspapers have devolved into the same class of tabloid reporting too. CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC. Let's not even go there. And yes, even Fox at times and other ABC shows mix journalism with speculation, opinion, attitude, and questionable interpretation. So simply, we don't watch those programs. David, you are too good for that. It's unbecoming, especially if you want to remain in good standing in the archives of journalistic professionalism. Most people don't understand the difference, but those acute enough to observe, and you are, know exactly what this is all about. President Trump called out the media for their fake news. This isn't new, but it never was as obvious and blatant and as damaging as it was for the 4 years of his presidency, and it's continuing now. It has become mainstream. Fake news is false or misleading information presented as news, as fact, but usually interspersed with opinion, or it's slanted or designed in a direction to draw one to a specific conclusion. It's like terming the riots, which robbed or burned thousands of buildings, as, quote, mostly peaceful protests. Like playing up the racism card when that isn't the case on Main Street America. Like driving the false narrative of a Trump-Russia collusion when there never was any evidence of it, and then come to find out it was fabricated by a certain presidential candidate, allegedly with the knowledge and support of a previous president, which is information that the mainstream press chose not to cover at all. There are three major types of fake news: misinformation, which is false information disseminated without harmful intent; disinformation, which is created and fabricated and shared by people with harmful intent; and malinformation, which is the sharing of genuine information, but with the intent of causing harm. It's the presentation of false narratives. It is misleading information, false content, fabricated content, and finely tuned and manipulated speech. It's the presentation of emotion over fact. It's the presentation of spurious or even twisted fact and logic and interpretation and conclusion. Joseph Goebbels, the minister of propaganda for Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany, specialized in it. Now, we need a free press. Originally, free press meant a media that wasn't controlled or manipulated by the government. Unfortunately, today it also includes media that isn't controlled and manipulated by large international mega corporations. One federal judge even came out and said that mainstream media, as it currently exists, is a viable threat to democracy itself. Look at the magnitude of this. The media may not just be an irritant, but actually responsible for the division and perhaps the downfall of an entire country. Hey, it's happened before. According to the Society for Professional Journalists, the Code of Ethics for Journalists demands that journalists seek truth and report it. Journalists need to provide context, to be cautious, to consider a source's motives, and to recognize that they have a special obligation to serve as watchdogs over public affairs and government, and also, I would add, over these mega corporations and now these non-profit political factions. Perhaps more than anything, your code of ethics demands that you have a responsibility to minimize harm to the public. This is journalistic integrity, and it's time that journalists stop the insanity and start challenging themselves to adopt a policy that will report the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. America deserves that. Let me give you an example. There was recently one well known and popular journalist who resigned, not out of pressure, but out of a moral obligation to herself. She said the news she was reporting was not, quote, entirely truthful. Sound familiar? The 30-year award-winning veteran stepped down because, as according to her, journalism has changed too much and is going in the wrong direction. She claims that the news today isn't fully truthful or that it tells only part of the story and in that way is misleading. And in this way, the news itself is actually contributing to the fear and division in the country, and she can't in good conscience continue in this way. And she's not the only one to quit. Quite a few have now left their jobs for the same reasons. The news organizations today want to edit and slant the news in a particular direction. They redline it, color it, twist it, play with it, politicize it, race card it, bend it, control it, fabricate it, contrive it, doctor it, and even manufacture and engineer it, such that the final product sometimes is nowhere near the truth at all. One other reporter who quit, allegedly from the New York Times, wrote that the Times does not tolerate differing viewpoints. The Times allows poison and venom as long as it is thrown at the proper targets. And my take is that they probably encourage it to. So, what's the bottom line? According to this one reporter, she said that as long as an article promotes progressive causes, it's published. Otherwise, it is carefully massaged, negotiated, and caveated. And she said that as such, the news is out of touch with its readers. Well, let me say that viewers are waking up to what's happening in the news industry, and we don't like it. So, I have a need to caution the press on reporting not a politically correct line, but a politicized and polarized line of reporting. I want to remind our journalists and you, David, that we need you more than ever. The news is always bad, but over the past few years, it's become toxic, and the country is becoming toxic. Again, in large part because of the division and false reporting of the media and the fear and discord and bitterness and resentment it's creating. We need our journalists to vet their reports with due diligence rather than regurgitating the corporate or political line or other social nonsense. Stop repeating the propaganda, fabricating a story, or presenting unknown sources to justify some obscure and dangerous statement or anything else that can distract, negate, and confuse viewers. Joseph Goebbels was the minister of propaganda in Nazi Germany. He said that, quote, there is no point in seeking to convert the intelligent people. Arguments, therefore, must be crude and appeal to the emotions and instincts and not to the intellect. The truth is unimportant and entirely subordinate to tactics and psychology. He also said, if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. David, we love you and believe in you. Don't let your corporation or any faction thereof destroy your ethical responsibility as a professional journalist. And actually, this goes for all journalists. Professional ethics first. Hey, be well, be safe, and may God bless.